the private sector is not crowded out. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Caroli Omondi.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. I actually rise to acknowledge the boldness of this report and the good work they have done. I think if you see the analysis that has been carried out and the recommendations, it is a very bold report. For example, if you go to paragraph 25, in terms of solvency of our debt sustainability analysis, this report clearly states that the debt to GDP ratio is projected to be about 65%, which actually is above the 55% plus 5 statutory ceiling set out under Section 50 of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 412. They even go further to say that the targets that have been set, even in 2028, are unlikely to be met. I mean, this is very frank. And I think the country is being given the true picture of our debt situation. Paragraph 26, liquidity perspective. Debt service to revenue, as well as debt service to export ratios, are expected to breach the limits over the medium-term horizon. Honorable Speaker, what is clearly being said is that Kenya's current debt situation is close to what you call debt distress levels. But, Honorable Speaker, whichever parameter you look at, whether it is risk of external debt distress or overall risk of debt distress, all those parameters, the results are that they are very high. And I think this report gives a very true and accurate picture of our situation. But what probably Kenyans need to remember is, how did we get into this? We should remember that in 2014, Kenya was reclassified from a low income to lower middle income economy. The reason why this was done, I think they call it rebasing, was that Kenya would then have the capacity to borrow from international financial markets. But what was not properly explained to Kenyans was that the opposite of that would be that we would lose access to other interest-free loans and grants, like what Honorable Ndindi was describing, certain World Bank or Bretton Woods support system. And the net effect of this is that we have begun to borrow from commercial markets, which are more expensive than like with the Eurobond, which we were not even able, the first Eurobond we were not even able to pay. We then refinanced it and borrowed more. And we are now in that famous cycle of African countries who have gone to Eurobond style of always refinancing and recycling that debt. Concessional loans, such as the ones you get from IMF and the World Bank and other multilaterals, would, as Honorable Ndindi has correctly said, would average about 3% interest rate plus service charge and capacity, whatever it is. But commercial loans are anywhere between 8 and 12%. Actually, because of this rebasing, because of this reclassification of Kenya from lower income to lower middle income economy, our debt to GDP ratio rose from 2011, it was at 36% to 68% in 2025. And in 2021, we actually entered into an IMF program to deal with our debt vulnerabilities. So, Honorable Speaker, I think we need a conversation on this issue. Because even the money that was borrowed from the commercial markets to finance the infrastructure, the investments did not yield the economic output that we expected, either in terms of economic performance or better export performance. And the question now that we need to ask ourselves, must we really insist we are a lower middle income economy, or should we just accept that we are a lower income economy and continue to have access to cheaper loans? Honorable Speaker, there are other issues that we need to talk about when we discuss Kenya's debt problems. One is overpricing and corruption of our projects. The securitization, if you look at the Talanta Stadium, when we did an analysis on it, the financing mechanism, 6 billion, we figured out as a committee of sports that there would be 6 billion excess payment. Bombers of Kenya, there's no transparency there. Nobody knows how that is being financed. There's excessive expenditure. We were being told as recent as last week by the Auditor General that State House spent 2.7 billion in excess of its budget. And, Honorable Speaker, unless we do all these things, we deal with corruption, we deal with efficiency, we deal with waste, nothing will change in our debt management. Finally, let me just make a proposal as a way forward. I think it is time to amend the CBK Act to allow subscription to government bonds electronically and in small denominations, just the way we use M-Pesa platform now to buy shares. We should democratize the ownership of borrowing